I sat in the front pew, hands folded tightly in my lap, as the soft organ music drifted through the room. My heart ached, but not from grief alone. It was the weight of eyes on my back, judging, whispering, assuming. I was Richard's wife for nearly 10 years, but to most of the people in that room, I was still the woman he married too quickly. The funeral parlor was small, just like Richard would have wanted. He hated fuss. I wore the black dress he loved most, the one with little silver buttons. My wedding ring felt heavier than ever. I reached into my purse and touched the old photograph I kept their our trip to Vermont. His arm around me, his grin full of life. I blinked hard, trying to hold myself together. Evelyn arrived late, flanked by her husband, Gregory, and 2 adult sons. She wore navy, not black. Her heels clicked with purpose. She didn't look at me, didn't nod, just walked straight past and took a seat on the opposite side. That was Evelyn, sharp-edged, polished, and cold. She'd never accepted that her father had fallen in love again. She thought I was a phase, a mistake. But Richard had chosen me, and that truth, no matter how much she hated it, could never be undone. The minister spoke kindly, but it was all so impersonal, as if Richard were just another name on a list of the departed. I listened, but I was floating in memories of Sunday mornings. His strong hand in mine, the way he laughed when I burned the toast every time. When it was over, the crowd shuffled out, offering quiet condolences. Most avoided eye contact, some muttered stiff apologies. I stood near the casket, alone, until everyone but Evelyn remained. She approached, eyes narrowed, mouth thin. My heart braced, knowing something cruel was coming. "I suppose now you'll go back to wherever you came from," Evelyn said, her voice flat. "I'm sure the money will last a while." My mouth went dry, my chest tightened, but I didn't respond. She took a step closer, her tone rising just enough to draw attention. "You got what you wanted, didn't you? You played your part, married an old man, smiled for the camera. Now you can collect." The room felt suddenly smaller. Several people turned their heads. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I refused to let her see me flinch. "You think everyone can't see what you are," she hissed, her words like knives. A gold digger. Before I could respond, a calm voice cut through the tension. "Miss Evelyn." Mr. Dillard, the family lawyer, approached with a manila folder tucked under his arm. His gray suit was crisp, and his expression unreadable. "We'll be starting the reading of the will now. If you and your family would follow me to the study." Evelyn stiffened. Why would she be included? Mr. Dillard didn't blink. "Because she's Richard's wife. And the will concerns her as much as it concerns you." The silence that followed was colder than the November wind outside. Evelyn turned to glare at me once more, but I met her eyes this time, not with anger, but calm, steady. I wasn't going anywhere, and I had no idea what Richard had written in that will, but I suddenly felt the shift. Not fear, not shame, something else, hope, or the quiet promise of justice. We sat in Richard's study, a room I'd spent many quiet mornings in, reading beside him as the sun came through the curtains. Now, it felt colder. The walls still held his scent coffee, leather, and a trace of lavender from his beard balm. I stared at the empty chair where he used to sit. Evelyn took the seat opposite me, crossing her arms tightly. Gregory stood behind her like a statue, looking everywhere except at me. Her sons didn't even sit. They just leaned against the wall, whispering. Mr. Dillard stood near the desk, placing the manila folder on the polished wood. He cleared his throat and looked at all of us with a somber expression. "This was prepared 6 months ago, in full health of mind and body." Richard was clear about every line. I held my breath. He began reading. First, the usual: debts paid, funeral costs covered. Then, sentimental items. Richard's vintage record player was left to Alan, his old friend, who looked stunned. A small endowment was assigned to the local animal shelter in Richard's name. Evelyn shifted in her seat. Then Mr. Dillard read, "To my daughter Evelyn, I leave the lake house property and family heirlooms stored there. I hope she finds peace and learns to forgive." Evelyn's lips parted slightly, and for a moment, she looked almost human. "And to my wife," Mr. Dillard continued, "I leave the main house, all bank holdings, investments, and full control of the charitable trust we built together, because she brought joy to my last 10 years and because I trust her more than anyone." The room fell silent. I stared at the floor. My ears rang. I didn't feel victorious, just numb. Evelyn stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. You've got to be joking, she spat. He was sick, you tricked him. Mr. Dillard raised a brow. Your father had full legal capacity. He made this decision well before he fell ill. Evelyn's voice cracked. This is theft. No, I said softly, finally looking up. This was love. Evelyn stormed out of the study, her sons trailing behind her. Gregory stayed a moment longer, his eyes meeting mine, with something that looked almost like shame. Then he left. Mr. Dillard closed the folder carefully and gave me a long look. He was proud of you, he said. He talked about how you took care of him when no one else did, how peaceful he felt in his last years. I tried to thank him, but the words caught in my throat. I only nodded. Alan came over and put a hand on my shoulder. He made the right choice, he said. Don't let them make you feel small for it. But I already did. Even with the house, the money, the trust, I felt smaller than I ever had. I hadn't asked for this war. I'd only wanted peace with Evelyn, but that was never enough for her. Later that night, I sat in the empty living room, watching shadows stretch across the floor. I could still hear her voice. Gold digger. That one word played over and over, like a cruel lullaby. I walked into Richard's study again, this time alone. I opened his desk drawer, reaching for the journal he always kept hidden under the blotter. My fingers trembled as I flipped through pages of his handwriting, letters, observations, poems. Then I found it. A letter, sealed, addressed to me. I opened it with careful hands. My love, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, but I want you to know, you gave me life again. You taught me how to laugh after years of silence. You reminded me how to live, even when I was dying. Don't let anyone take your truth from you. You were never a gold digger. You were the gold. The tears came then, slow and quiet, not from grief alone, but from knowing someone had truly seen me, and maybe, just maybe, it was time I started seeing myself too. Nina arrived the next morning, her suitcase rolling behind her, wearing the same denim jacket she'd owned for 20 years. She hugged me tight, pressing her cheek against mine without saying a word. That was how we always communicated, best in silence, when words would only fall short. I saw the news online, she said once we were in the kitchen. Evelyn's throwing fits on Facebook. Says, you manipulated Richard. I looked down at my tea. She stood at his funeral and called me a gold digger, in front of everyone. Nina's eyes flashed with anger. She's always been like that. You just never fought back. I never wanted to fight, but you did fight, she said, leaning across the table, by loving him, and by staying. And now she's mad because she can't erase that. I didn't know what to say. Part of me still believed maybe I could have done more to earn Evelyn's respect. Another part knew she had made up her mind the day Richard married me. We took a walk later that afternoon, winding through the quiet neighborhood. Leaves crunched beneath our feet. When we got back to the house, I noticed a familiar figure standing by the gate. It was Rebecca, the old housekeeper who'd retired just a year before Richard passed. She looked nervous but determined. I came to see you, she said. There's something you need to know. I invited her in. She hesitated before stepping inside, eyes scanning the home like she was seeing a ghost. Richard told me things, she said finally. About Evelyn, about the money. My heart skipped. What things? Rebecca sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa. He was afraid to put it in writing. But he told me Evelyn had tried to get him declared mentally unfit after his last hospital stay. She called his doctor, told him you were poisoning him. My breath caught. What? She wanted the trust signed over to her. She said he wasn't in his right mind anymore, but he refused. I clutched the edge of the coffee table. He never told me. He didn't want to burden you, Rebecca said. He cried that day. Told me you were the only thing keeping him going. I felt sick, angry, shattered. I had assumed Evelyn hated me because of her mother. I never imagined she'd go that far. She came by the house the week before he died, Rebecca added. Said she'd sue you the moment he passed. Nina stood up, pacing. You need to protect yourself. Legally, emotionally, everything. That woman is dangerous. I nodded, but inside, I was spinning. I had mourned Richard quietly, carried my grief without complaint. But now, I felt something darker stirring. Not just sorrow, not even fear. Rage. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you stand taller. The kind that tells you, this is not over. That night, I went back to the study and took out Richard's journal again. I flipped through every page, looking for clues, confirmations, and there, toward the end, scribbled in messy ink. I found a note. If Evelyn ever challenges the will, show her the file in the safety deposit box. She'll know exactly what it means. I sat back, heart pounding. What was in that box? And why had he never told me? The next morning, I called the bank and asked to schedule a visit to Richard's safety deposit box. My hands trembled as I dialed. Part of me feared what I might find, what secrets he may hidden even from me. Of course, Mrs. Bennet, said the woman on the other end. We have you listed as the secondary holder. You can come in any time. Nina insisted on driving me. The air outside was bitter and still, like the universe knew something heavy was about to unfold. I clutched the letter from Richard in my coat pocket, like it might give me courage. When we arrived, the bank manager, Margot, greeted us warmly. Richard talked about you all the time, she said with a smile that reached her eyes. Always said you made him feel young again. I didn't know how to answer. I just nodded. She led us into the vault, where she pulled open a long metal drawer and retrieved a small steel box. I signed my name on the register and sat at the table, my fingers trembling as I opened it. Inside, there were only two things, a USB drive and a single manila envelope. I opened the envelope first. Inside was a copy of a psychiatric assessment. 2 years ago, Evelyn had formally requested an evaluation of Richard's mental state. There were handwritten notes from the doctor. Patient demonstrates full cognitive function. Daughter appears insistent without merit. Possible ulterior motives. Nina gasped as she read over my shoulder. She really tried to do it, I whispered. She wanted to have him declared incompetent, so she could take everything. I felt cold all over, but I wasn't done. I inserted the USB into my laptop right there at the bank's small security desk. What popped up was a video. Richard, sitting in his study, looking straight into the camera. If you're watching this, he said, she's made her move. Richard's voice was calm, but his eyes were tired. I didn't want to believe Evelyn could turn on me like that, but after what she tried getting my doctor involved, suggesting I was being poisoned, it became clear she was after the money, not the memories. I leaned forward, my hands pressed against my chest. She's my daughter. I will always love her, but love doesn't mean blindness. If she challenges the will, show this. Let her see that I knew what I was doing. Every cent I left you because you gave me peace, because you loved me when I was at my worst. When I was afraid, he looked down for a moment, then, back at the camera. I hope she finds healing one day, but not at your expense. The video ended. I couldn't breathe. I felt like crying, laughing, collapsing. The man I had loved, he had known this day might come, and he had prepared for it. Nina reached over and held my hand. You're not crazy. He saw her clearly. Outside the bank, the sun had come out, but the air still felt heavy. Back home, I transferred the video to a flash drive and slipped it into my desk drawer. I didn't know when I'd use it, but I knew I'd need it. That night, I lay in bed, remembering the first time I met Richard. I had spilled coffee on his shoes in a bookstore. He had laughed instead of getting angry. That's who he was, gentle, forgiving, loyal to a fault. I loved him for all of it, and now, I had a choice to make. Do I try to reason with Evelyn one last time? Or do I let her bury herself with her own bitterness, and use the truth if she ever dares to come for me? 2 days passed before I made the call. I wasn't looking for a fight, was looking for a resolution. A way to show Evelyn I wasn't her enemy, that I never had been. Maybe Richard's message would shake her, maybe not. But I had to try. Found Angela's number through a friend. She was a retired attorney, now working as a family mediator. She had a soft voice but didn't let people walk over her. I told her everything, from the will to the accusations. She's angry, Angela said gently. People lash out when they think they've lost control, but I can try to open the door for a conversation. A meeting was scheduled at a neutral office space the next day. Nina came with me, sitting quietly in the corner. I wore a simple blue dress Richard had once called my lighthouse color. He said I glowed in it. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes late. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor. Her jaw was tight. She didn't look at me. Angela welcomed her with calm authority. We're here for conversation, not accusation. Both of you deserve to be heard. Evelyn finally looked at me, her eyes cold. I don't know why we're here. The will's invalid. You'll see that when my lawyers file. I stayed calm. There's something you should see first. I pulled out the flash drive and handed it to Angela. She plugged it into her laptop and hit play. Evelyn watched. Her arms slowly unfolded, her mouth parted. She didn't say a word. When the video ended, silence filled the room like smoke. Angela closed the laptop gently. "That's a powerful message," she said. Evelyn blinked fast, like she didn't know what to say. For a moment, she looked like a little girl caught in a lie. Then, her face hardened. "You manipulated him." I shook my head. "He made this video a year ago, before he got sick, before any of this started. You don't have to like me, Evelyn, but your father did, and he made his choices clearly." Her voice trembled. "He was mine first. You took him away. I didn't take him. He chose to let someone new in." She stood up, pacing. "You don't know what it's like to lose a parent to a stranger, to watch someone else make their final years beautiful when you weren't allowed." My heart softened for a second. "You had time," I said softly. "You had years, but you spent them resenting him instead of loving him." Angela stepped in gently. "This doesn't need to go to court, Evelyn. If this continues, everything your father wanted protected may be exposed to public record, and the video would not help your case." Evelyn sat down again, slowly. Her eyes were red. She didn't speak. "I don't want a war," I said, "but I won't be erased." She stared at me, the silence between us so heavy it felt like a second funeral. Angela finally asked, "Do you want to pursue legal action against the will?" Evelyn didn't answer, but I saw the war inside her shifting. I just didn't know which side would win. The morning after our mediation, I received an unexpected phone call. "This is Detective Harris," the voice said. "I worked a small welfare inquiry for Mr. Richard Bennett a year ago. He asked that I check in on him after a series of unsettling phone calls from his daughter." My chest tightened. "Why are you calling me now?" "I saw the obituary and realized who you must be," he said gently. "Your husband filed a statement in case anything happened to him. It wasn't enough for criminal charges, but it showed concern. He mentioned pressure, manipulation. I just thought you should know he was worried." My hand shook as I held the receiver. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Maybe he wanted to protect you, but he left a record, and that record still exists." After I hung up, I sat for a long time in the study, staring at Richard's empty chair. There were so many pieces to this story I hadn't known, so many quiet battles he'd fought alone. I wasn't sure what to do with the detective's information, but something told me to hold on to it just in case. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Marcus, Evelyn's eldest son, standing there, hands in his jacket pockets. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. "I need to talk to you," he said, "just for a minute." Marcus sat stiffly on the couch, his knee bouncing nervously. "My mom doesn't know I'm here," he said quickly. "She's been going through it lately, drinking too much, lashing out." I watched him carefully. "Why are you here, Marcus?" He looked down at his hands. "She's thinking about going forward with the lawsuit, but I found something in her closet." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I opened it slowly, my eyes scanning the bold headline, "Petition for Guardianship, Citing Cognitive Decline." It had Richard's name on it, dated just months before his final hospitalization. Signed Evelyn Margaret Bennett. "I don't think she ever filed it," he said, "but she meant to, and she never told anyone." My hands clenched the paper. It was all true. The video, the threats, the poisoning lie. She'd tried to take him by force. "She said she was protecting him," Marcus added quietly. "But I think she was protecting herself from not being chosen." I looked at him. "Why are you really here, Marcus?" He exhaled. "Because I don't want to be part of this anymore. I loved my grandfather, and I know he loved you." I felt my throat close. I hadn't expected kindness from Evelyn's family, not after everything. Marcus stood. "Do what you need to do with that paper, Jaff. Don't let it ruin you." After he left, I stared at the document in my hand, a piece of Evelyn's betrayal, concrete and sharp. It was time I stopped surviving and started standing for Richard, for me. That night, I sat with Nina at the kitchen table, the guardianship document between us. She really was going to have him declared mentally incompetent. Nina whispered, "This. This could change everything." "She never filed it," I murmured. But the intention was there. We both knew this paper wasn't just a weapon, it was a mirror. Proof that Evelyn's war had started long before Richard died and that love was never her motivation. Control was. I spent hours debating whether to bring it to Mr. Dillard or file it away as insurance. But deep inside, A part of me didn't want to fight dirty, even though she had. Later, Nina made a call to her old friend Carolyn, a small-town journalist who now ran a podcast on legal ethics and family inheritance. Disputes, just in case, Nina said. If Evelyn takes this public, we won't be quiet anymore. When Caroline heard the story, her voice dropped to a hush. That video alone would go viral. But pair it with the guardianship attempt, she'd bury herself. I didn't like the idea of exposing everything, but I had to admit it felt good knowing I had a voice, too. Still, something tugged at me. After Nina went to bed, I sat in the living room, turning the guardianship form over and over. And that's when I remembered something from years ago. Photo of Evelyn, at age 10, standing with her father in the backyard, her arms wrapped around his waist, smiling like the world couldn't touch them. She hadn't always been this cruel. Somewhere along the way, something broke. The next morning, I woke up early and returned to Richard's journal. I found an old entry, dated nearly 5 years back. Tried talking to Evelyn today. She accused me of replacing her mother. I told her there's room in my heart for more than one kind of love. She didn't believe me. I traced my fingers along the fading ink. Sometimes, I wonder if she hates you because you remind her of what her mother wasn't. Gentle, patient, forgiving. I hope one day she understands. My heart ached. That was the thing no one tells you about grief. It's never just for the person you lost. It's also for what could have been. For relationships that stayed broken. For love that never made it through. I made my decision. I scanned the guardianship form, the video, and the psychiatric report. I made 2 neat folders, one for my lawyer, and one to be mailed to Evelyn if she pushed me again. Not to threaten her, but to remind her that I had proof and power. That afternoon, I got a message from Mr. Dillard. Evelyn's attorney had called. She wasn't pursuing a challenge to the will. I sat in silence for a long time after. I read the message. It wasn't celebration I felt. It was stillness, relief, and something like quiet sorrow. The war might be over, but some wounds would take time to heal. Still, I had survived it. I hadn't screamed, I hadn't stooped low, but I'd stood my ground, and that, I thought, was its own kind of justice. A week passed in peace. The house felt different now, quieter, but no longer cold. I let light into rooms I'd kept closed since Richard passed. I aired out his study, played his records, even put out his favorite blue mug, just to feel closer to him. I wasn't sure what to do next. The fight was over, but I didn't feel triumphant. I felt changed. I took long walks alone, sometimes with Nina, sometimes without. I sat in parks and watched children play, couples bicker, dogs chased their tails. Life kept moving. It always did. One morning, I pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years, before Richard, before the insults, before the lawyer and the will. There I was, 22, standing in front of my first apartment, hair wild, eyes full of fire. I remembered that girl. She was scared, but bold. She dreamed of love, not war. She wanted to be someone's safe place. I closed the album and looked at my reflection in the glass. I hadn't lost her. She'd just gone quiet for a while. Then I opened Richard's final letter once more. Don't let anyone take your truth from you. You were never a gold digger. You were the gold. This time, I didn't cry. I smiled. That afternoon, I walked to the garden where Richard and I used to sit during warm evenings. I brought a chair, a blanket, and his old journal. The air was still, peaceful. I read the last few pages, then leaned back and closed my eyes. In my mind, I heard his voice, not in a video, not from a letter, but from memory. Promise me, if the world ever tries to dim you, you'll shine anyway. I promise, I whispered aloud. I knew Evelyn wouldn't apologize. People like her rarely do, but I didn't need it anymore. I had seen the truth. So had others. And most importantly, so had I. Nina came out with 2 cups of tea. She sat beside me without a word, just like always. You gonna be okay? She asked after a while. I already am, I said, and I meant it. We sat together as the sky changed color. Gold crept across the horizon, soft and glowing. Richard used to say sunsets were proof that endings could still be beautiful. I watched the light fade, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light inside me too. This wasn't the life I had imagined at 70, but it was mine, and I was still here, still standing, still gold.